planar dynamic headphones. This is no ordinary Audeze LCD X stereo azimuth here, and got these custom modded headphones. These are basically started off as normal, and I'm on a new kind of setup here to try to not get my camera in the way, but this is not your normal set of LCD X's, the new ones from 2021. These were modified by a guy named Whitney. You can go to his website. I'll put a link in the description to rhythmdevilsaudio.com. Rhythm Devils Audio. And he's a regular, current member on Super Best Audio Friends, and he modifies planar dynamic headphones. He has a love for planar dynamics, and like every, manufacturer who manufactures these, any sort of headphones, they make them to where they can make a whole lot of them like in production. And I've talked to different modders. I'm like, well, why do you modify them? Why do you add your own thing? Like, aren't they perfect? Like when they come from the factory, that's how they design them. And one modder, not Whitney himself, but one modder said, well, there's certain things that you can do, like in the with the cup or whatever, with the design that is you can do by hand, but it's hard to do repetitively. And I also asked Whitney, I said, what aren't a lot of I asked him sort of the same questions, like what are you passionate about, or like why do you modify these headphones? A lot of people feel like they're already perfect the way they are, they're already great the way they are. And he had an interesting response, and you can read, like, if you go to the website and read the about page, that answers a lot of the questions. But part of it, part of that answer is that there's still a lot of driver potential that's there to give us different aspects of different things, of whatever that we're looking for, whether it be like a tonality shift, whether it be like sort of a resolution, and then there's trade-offs into that. And I think that from what I sort of gather, and it was like just reading through his email, is like some may lack bass, or some may lack treble, or like you have like your own sort of preferences, and you want it to sound like as natural as possible, and then you want like that to be an enjoyable experience. And he doesn't tune by like with a machine, or like with a like I have mini DSP ears, or any sort of like measuring device. He measures like by his ears, like how it sounds to him. And I find it very interesting because these are pretty incredible. Now, if you look, now I'm going to switch. And the last thing I'll say is like, part of his motivations too is like, the same sort of thing I get from like sort of Jupiter, and also what motivated like the ETA. If you've heard of ETA headphones, you heard me speak about it. Like their sort of philosophy too is like, we all want better sound, but I think that the modders like Jupiter from Jupiter Audio Research, and also Whitney, it's like you're trying to get the best potential out of something as possible. I mean, I think that's what like every modder wants. Like it's still the same thing. If you think about like, I bought a car and it has an engine, but let's put in we have some factory suspension, but let's put in some, custom suspension. Let's get it custom tuned. Let's lower it to the ground. Let's get some, custom intake, all that kind of stuff to tune it for whatever that you're trying to do. And I think that they're trying to do the same thing here. So a lot of people, like, there's a big sort of like pushback against the, modder community. And, to me, I don't think that there's, anything wrong with that, because it's like you already have a start for a great bass, then that's make it better. You know what I'm saying? I mean, that's how race cars and all that got involved, because, I'm a car guy. But anyway, I'm going to switch to here. If you look at the headphone itself, you see these holes, and these are like straw holes. And we have the perforated pads. You look inside, we have this little, thing here. It's this little kind of pad. It's kind of stuck on. So I don't really know much about what went into everything as far as the design. I do know, yes, they're heavy. Yes, I hate the Audeze headband. I mean, this just doesn't work for me. There's not much padding. This hurts. I mean, this just digs into my head. Audeze, please. New headband. But let's go back to the and then you also have like the mini XLRs and things like that. As far as the sound quality, what do they sound like, you want to know? Well, from what I gather from everybody is that the original LCD-X was kind of thin sounding, or the 2021. These sound very full. They sound very grand in the bass department, but it has some lows, but it's not like shaking my, the pants or whatever, like lows. The lows are still there, but they don't dominate and they don't like control everything. The lows, I mean, I could say they might bleed into the lower mids just a touch, but that to me is not necessarily a bad thing. I kind of like that, sometimes, because I'm listening to like a lot of rock recordings and things like that. But it also, I think, what gives them their fullness, and it's just like kind of barely. There is a slight roll off at the very low octave, but you almost don't miss it because the planar bass is still sort of like there, and that fullness is still sort of there. So, and I think it exhibits like more sort of control, I guess, and definition in the low end. The mid-range, of course, is like, we'll get to the mids in a second. Let's talk about the treble. The treble is still really detailed and crisp, and it doesn't sound like, too dark. And it still just like gives you, it's so fast, listening to drums just like makes me smile, because it sounds like drums should sound like. And, I'm a drummer. I like drums. I like the way they sound. And that planar speed is there. It's still there. There's no real grit. It's not real gritty. I've tried LCD2 Classics. I had them for almost a year. And those always had like a high sort of grit to them. Now I use them with like the suede vegan pads. Some people who use the full pads don't really kind of hear the graininess a little bit. But I've always liked those suede pads a little bit better, because I think that the other pad sounded like a little too muffled or too cut off in the top end. The only really sort of negative that I can say about this particular like headphone is like there's still a real sort of breathiness in the high mids. Like you can really tell if you're listening to like bad recordings. Like when I put in like filter, for example, which is like these loudness war, like and all planers kind of do this. Like they all have a problem with these loudness wars tracks where it's just like, banging, and then you have these loud screeching, very mid guitars. I mean, this is a pretty flat, response headphone, and it's not very forgiving in the mids. So you get all of those mids sort of like in your face. So it kind of has this kind of glariness slightly in the mids, and I don't know if that's come from these headphones or not. But that's only on certain recordings. Could I really hear that on bad recordings? On good recordings, or even medium well recordings, they sounded great and fantastic and dynamic and, real and resolving and, spaciousness. The soundstage probably wasn't as enveloping as 650s, but or 800s. Obviously, I mean 800s are that's like the king of soundstage. But they still gave me a sense of room and reverb decay and all of that fun stuff in the details. Some people say, and I'm gonna bring this up. I see a lot of people in recording using Audeze headphones nowadays for a reference headphone. I don't think LCD X's or even these would be considered a reference headphone. Because I think because there's still some coloration, I think, that's going on. That it's almost too enjoyable for it to be called a reference. Now, these are probably closer than the XCs to a reference headphone, but planar headphones to me are just not as much of a reference. I do think a lot of people in production, though, probably really like them because you can hear some details in there that you may not catch on dynamic headphones, depending on what amplifier that you have. So speaking of amplifier, how much power do they need? Do they need LCD, LCD? Do they need High Feynman HFE 6 power? Do you need a speaker amp to drive them? And the answer is no. I try them along with the amp. Whitney also sent a Monoprice liquid gold. It's called if you see it in the forums, it's called a LAUX, and that's because AU is the gold, element symbol, and then the X because I guess because of the Monoprice, because of the connection with Alex Cavelli and the Monoprice community when he came out with his, with his amps, especially the liquid carbon. It was the liquid carbon X, but then after that, when he was not with Mass Drop or Drop, and he was just on his own in Mass Drop, when it was Monoprice, right? It was Monoprice liquid platinum and Monoprice liquid gold. The platinum being the hybrid amp, and the liquid gold being the full solid state amp. And I really probably preferred the liquid gold as far as a good amp, and it made it more closer to a reference amp because of it had these bellowing lows that almost sounded kind of tube in the low end, and it gave it power and heft. But when I put it on my small rig and I hooked it up to my Magni Piety, it was I so much drive out of them. I was barely touching the volume control. So if you have a headphone amp that can drive a HT 650, you can have a headphone amp that can drive these. Now, are you going to scale up and get better? Yeah, probably. You're going to get more details and all that kind of fun business, basically. More width, more details, better sound quality, better richness, all that kind of stuff. So I think that these, besides the weight, they're forgiving. They are not forgiving at all. They are not forgiving. but on like acoustic music and jazz and even, you know, like light rock and most other stuff. I mean, I listened to like Steely Dan and you know, the Doobie Brothers and stuff like that. And it was, you know, I was blown away. But you know, I go back to, you know, something like the Foo Fighters, and it's just like, no, it's just like I almost have to listen to those like wearing like Porta Pros because they're just like so such, you know, brash recordings anyway. Really, they're not meant to hear every little like detail and layering because they weren't like recorded that way. They were just the, you know, dynamic range is just smashed to death. So I think that this is amazing headphone. Not really sounding thin, not really sounding like what I may have expected. Very full, you know, very smooth, wonderful experience. And if I could afford them, I'd probably own a pair. And it's led me down to possibly looking for some of the older Audeze LCD 2s, like the first generation, the pre-phasers, right? And they're really hard to find. So if you've got a lead and want to help me out, trying to find a pair of first generation, like pre-phaser LCD 2s, you know, hit me up, email me. I want to buy them. So anyway, that's all I got. If you have any questions, or if you want to know anything, just hit me up. But yeah, check out Whitney. Check out his website. Check out what he does. He doesn't just do these headphones. He's got a couple other things and a couple other like mods that he does. So it's kind of like a one-off order custom thing that he works with you to get the custom, like whatever or sound that you're after and that you want. But this is like his, you know, sort of tuning, his sort of take on the LCD X that I enjoyed quite immensely. So anyway, so thanks very much, guys. You guys take care. Have a good one.